Why do you think that the Fed is going to reverse policy this year, and how will that help Bitcoin, considering the fact that we've had this incredible run-up as the Fed raises rates?
Yeah, so thank you for having me, first of all. I think the Fed started the whole process back in 2021, and that has triggered all the events we saw last year, from Luna to all the cataclysmic events we had. And the Fed pausing is giving like some contention over the market to see where we are going from there. We're going to see what the minutes are tomorrow, but that's certainly going to help the overall market.
Fair enough. So the big run-up in rates actually happened earlier, or was priced in, I guess, by Bitcoin as it crashed and a lot of other crypto assets. Now, I guess the market is just pricing in what's expected to be either a pause or a pivot lately, and that's why we've seen the run from 16,000 to 23?
Yeah, you can use that as a macro element, but you can also look at what's happened in terms of events at the end of Q3 and Q4 and how the market has recovered from that itself. The gap from the FTX moment has been filled, and the market is like, okay, this is beyond us. We kind of understand what are the consequences of this market and this market's events, and we can look at it in a bit more unbiased way. So,
who are the buyers right now? Is it institutions that are feeling brave enough to get back in, or is this mostly retail activity that has been driving such a strong month?
So I think historically at Coinshares, you can definitely see we saw a very strong drive from since 2015 from the retail. But over the years, we saw the quality of the signature of the people joining being more and more institutional, and we can see more and more institutions like coming back to it and doing their homeworks and getting very, very opinionated, I would say, internally about is it the time to invest or not.
And if you are invested, you've had to ride quite a roller coaster over the last year. Of course, a large part of that, the collapse of FTX, and frankly, bankruptcies that came before that. A lot of assets now out there floating. Are you looking to acquire anything? Are you interested in M&A activity at this point at Coinshares?
Well, I think we disclosed in our Q3 earnings call that Coinshares, as a publicly listed company, was looking at a number of, I would say, bankruptcy estate. If we remember where we come from, actually, Coinshares started by an acquisition in the bankruptcy estate of a mining company in Sweden. So it's a bit of a repetition for us of a journey we know very well. We know how to look at this distressed asset. We know how to take a position if we need to. We disclose we were looking at Celsius. We disclose we were looking at Voyager. We talk about Nure in our earnings call. That's kind of stuff which are beyond us, and nothing further would certainly emerge from that. But we are looking at stuff which are also probably not yet on the market, and we have a strong interest in the US as well.
You know, I learned my lesson about exposing my private key to the public 10 years ago now. A lot of other people are learning a lesson. Don't keep your assets on the exchange, or have learned it in 2022. Why should they trust Coinshares and your exchange-traded product?
Yeah, well, first of all, the exchange-traded product is the ultimate tool if you are not a professional and you don't really know how to secure these keys. At Coinshares, we've been working in this digital asset industry since 2013, and we have built an expertise around key management and also all the cybersecurity process around that. As early as 2017, we realized the need for custody in the industry, and we went in business with Nomura and Ledger, the French security company, to create a custody project which was supporting the fact that Coinshares wanted to be best in class, wanted to be, almost a grown-up kind of action in an industry which was very much in its infancy, and we have kept doing that since then. So I think, if anything, the single fact that Coinshares is in business since 2014 in the digital asset industry, and being an audited company, disclosing statement, disclosing financial, being a listed company, all that constitute, I would say, trust and transparency, which are not discrete points. Like we talk about proof of reserve earlier on this year with the exchanges. This is not proof of reserve we're doing. We are every single day showing our financials to the market and coming out every quarter.
So there's no chance, essentially, that you take a whole bunch of customers' funds and exchange-traded products and then use them to try and generate yield in other investments.
No.
It's just set up so that's not possible for you to do that. Do you think that business model is dead?
Well, that's really the exchange business model. That's a different business model. Coinshares is not an exchange. Coinshares customer funds are completely ring-fenced when it comes to our Coinshares digital securities and physical products. So we are making that in a very native way. It's part of the legal framework we have around this product. So it's not something we can be content. Well, we are content with the way we are doing it, and we will never go the way the exchange are running stuff. So I think the exchange will change the way they are running to be able to transform and strive.
You mentioned legal framework. Let's talk about regulatory frameworks as well, because obviously Coinshares is one of the largest players in the space in Europe, which arguably is far ahead of the US in many ways. How do you see that taking shape? Is Europe going to maintain its lead as US regulators and lawmakers seem that they're still dragging their feet trying to lay the rules of the road here in the States?
I think it's you need the political will first. Everywhere you see in Europe where you had a strong footprint in regulation, you had the political will. So if you look at France, France was very driving the European legislation, but before France started to drive, Emmanuel Macron pushed forward a law in 2017, which ended up being translated in regulation through the years which followed. And you can see it as well in Hong Kong. You can see it in other countries where the regulatory framework has been built because the political will was there first. In the US, we saw last year the presidential office making some decision and pushing the narrative in that direction. But if the legislation start moving toward that, then I think the agencies will be able to figure out who is in charge and who is not in charge.
Well, it just so happens we're going to speak with a legislator here in a couple minutes, Representative French Hill, who is heading up the subcommittee on digital assets in the House. If you had one question for him and his fellow lawmakers about the policy landscape here in the U.S., what would it be?
And we will ask him your question next.
It will not be, well, it's maybe an open question. Say we would love to know who we can regulate crypto between the CFTC and the SEC and have clarity. So what then products like the ETF, which need to come to the US, can find a house, because until there is clarity between these two agencies, it's very difficult to find the right framework.
But surely they'll both regulate it. Surely they're going to try and divide it up in some ways. Do you expect an ETF to come in the U.S. in the foreseeable future?
I would love to see an ETF coming to the U.S. I think it would be good for the industry in itself. Coinshares would love to be able to offer that as well. In the US, if we have a chance to have a product at one point in the US. But more importantly, I think if the CFTC takes the lead, like you saw, for instance, in the US oil market back in 2006 when they launched the first US oil ETF, then the SEC is administrating the product and regulating the product. So you can see things happening where, yes, they work in concert, but they know clearly which remit they have on the product or the underlying of the product.
And finally, we have seen at various different players, including at Grayscale, which of course has GBTC, which is what tried to turn into an ETF in the first place. In so many different areas of the industry, we are starting to see pulling back of the workforce, layoffs seemingly announced every week. What are you doing with your workforce at Coinshares?
We've been very fortunate at Coinshares to not hire in a kind of crazy way. So we hire in a very focused way. So we have been integrating our team through different wave of hiring, and we never really end up in an overstaffed position. So we are lucky enough to not be in a position to have to let a lot of people go. And the only reason we may let people go is for performance, not for financial reason.